What is that flying through the air? Is it alive? It might be a bird or an airplane. They both fly. How are they alike? How are they different? You know you need to eat and breathe to stay alive. All living things carry out activities called life processes. There are 6 of them. Follow along. All organisms must get energy. Plants get energy from sunlight. Animals get energy and nutrients by eating other living things. Living things use energy to do work. They break down food material and release the stored energy. When they use energy, living things produce waste. These wastes can be poisonous. Living things must get rid of wastes. Living things make more of its own kind. Reproducing keeps groups of organisms alive. Growing is a job that takes place in nutrients. Living things respond to changes around them. You put on a coat when it gets cold, and dogs grow a thicker coat of hair when the weather gets colder. Some non-living things seem to carry out some of life's processes. Both a bird and plane can use energy to fly, but you know that a bird is a living thing and an airplane isn't. It's not always easy to tell if something is living. For example, most scientists think that viruses aren't living things because they can't carry out some of life's processes. A virus is a tiny particle that can reproduce only when it is inside a living cell, the basic unit of an organism's body. The virus uses the parts of the cell to produce more viruses. Viruses don't grow the way living things do. They can't release and use energy. Even when you have a cold or flu, you have a virus inside your body. Unlike viruses, bacteria carry out all the life processes. Bacteria, such as ones shown, are tiny living things not much bigger than viruses. These cells are prokaryotic, meaning they have no nucleus. Genetic information in prokaryotic cells just sort of floats free in cytoplasm. Most bacteria are harmless and many are helpful, like Lactobacillus acidophilus, which is used to make yogurt. However, some kinds can make you sick if they get into your body. This brings us to cells. A cell is the smallest unit of life. Living things are made up of cells. A row of 50 to 100 of most animal cells would fit inside a millimeter space on a ruler. You cannot see one of them without a microscope. Cells are classified into 2 major groups on the basis whether or not they have a nucleus. The first, prokaryotes. They do not have a nucleus. This includes bacteria. The second classification for cell groups are eukaryotes. These cells have a nucleus. This includes all cells except bacteria. Eukaryotic cells have 3 major parts: a cell membrane, a nucleus, and cytoplasm. Each of these bacteria is a single cell, or prokaryote. Each of these cells carry out all the processes of life. From jellyfish to trees and monkeys and many other organisms is made up of millions and millions of cells. You know that living things are made up of cells. You know that the cells aren't all alike. Cells of animals and plants are different in some ways and alike in others. First, let's look at an animal cell. Start with the cell membrane. It's a thin layer that surrounds the cell. It provides structure and protection. It's semi-permeable, meaning it only lets certain substances in or out of the cell. Next is the Golgi body. It packages proteins and carbohydrates into vessels for transport outside of the cell. Endoplasmic reticulum. There's 2. There's a smooth and there's a rough. We're going to do the smooth first. The smooth ER makes lipids, which are also fats, and modifies proteins. It then transports these materials through the cell. The powerhouse of the cell is known as the mitochondria. They provide energy for the cell. This is the site of cellular respiration. The nucleus is the control center of the cell. It directs many of its functions of the cell. It also holds cell's DNA. The nucleolus is inside of the nucleus. It aids in the production of ribosomes. The rough ER has ribosomes bound to its membranes. Ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis. The lysosome is the digestive system of the cell. They help break down waste molecules. The fluid in which the cell organelles are suspended is known as cytoplasm. It maintains the pressure inside the cell. Centrosomes create microtubules. Centrioles contained in the centrosome help the cell to divide during mitosis. Vacuoles provide storage for the cell for materials such as water. Vesicles are smaller storage organelles that move material into and out of the cell. Now let's take a look at plant cells. The plant cell has two different components than the animal cell. First is the cell wall. They're only found in plant cells. They provide extra structure and protection for plants. Next, you have chloroplasts. They convert light energy from the sun into sugars that can be used for the cell for energy. This process is called photosynthesis. One of the most fascinating parts of the cell is the cell membrane. The membrane is of great interest to biologists because it controls the movement of material in and out of the cell, and it is important for the cell's interactions with other cells and the environment. The fluid mosaic model describes the structure of the membrane. The model includes two components, one of them being a phospholipid bilayer. This is when a double layer of phospholipid molecules forms a sheet. The molecules are arranged with the polar, hydrophilic, water-loving heads facing to the inside of the cell. The nonpolar, hydrophobic, water-fearing fatty acid tails face to the inside of the membrane. The second component is proteins. Proteins are embedded in the phospholipid bilayer. There are 4 different proteins, and each has a specific function: cell recognition, receptors, enzymes, and transport. The cell membrane limits the flow of material in and out of the cell. This allows the cell to establish an environment that is distinct from the surrounding environment. The cell membrane is described as selectively permeable. The selectively permeable membrane does not let some molecules pass through it, but water and some other small molecules can cross the membrane. The chemical properties of the membrane determine which type of particles can cross the membrane. Movement of material across the cell membrane involves an active or passive process. Passive processes use the energy that the particles have, and it can also use an active process where it uses chemical energy from a fuel called ATP, and you'll learn more about that in later courses. Hope you enjoyed the video.